in brightest day and blackest night. Nobody will escape his sight. Parallax will steal the light. The heroes face him with all their might. 0 hour, the clock is ticking fast. Heroes saving the future and the past. Eclipse of time, a cosmic fight to save existence from eternal blight. Eternal blight.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Midlife Crisis. Today, we're talking about 0 Hour, which is the whole name is 0 Hour: A Crisis in Time. It's a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it is DC's attempt at cleaning up any continuity issues that were left with Crisis, like with the previous Crisis. This event follows Monarch, Hank Hall, trying to recreate the timeline that he came from. Why is... We're about to go into it. We're about to explain what even happened to his timeline. This event alone is just a 5-issue miniseries that counts down from 4 to 0. But there's a couple of extra issues that I'm going to be reading alongside it that are important to the story. I'm not going to be doing all the tie-ins because most of them are just nostalgia stuff. You know, like in the Batman comic, Batgirl, like the original one from the 1960s, comes back and meets herself, who is Oracle in a wheelchair. Like, stuff like that. But I will talk about, like, the Flash one, obviously, because we're reading the Flash. And there's also a Green Lantern issue that I'm going to be reading at the end of the event, because it serves as a bit of an epilogue. Like, it's pretty important, kind of like the actual true ending to the event. But before we get into 0 Hour, we got a couple of issues from a comic known as Showcase, which was a comic series where it would just be full of different stories, and they decided to include some of the stories that would set up this event. And then after that, we're going to be reading a few issues of The Flash that are important to 0 Hour. And then after that, we'll be getting into 0 Hour. And then at the end of 0 Hour, we'll cover Flash issue 0 and Green Lantern issue 0. Because 0 Hour did like a special 0 month after they finished the event, where every single series did an issue 0, which would normally reveal something important about the character. That was kind of the service that they played. And the Flash and Green Lantern 0 issues are important as kind of cleanup for the event in Fallout. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into 0 Hour, starting with Showcase issue 8, in a story called Sum Zero, written by Dan Jurgens, with art by Frank Fosco and Ken Branch. So, Waverider, we all know about Waverider. Michael Ryder came from Matt Ryder, I think his name is, came from the future, where Monarch had control of everything, and he went back, he ended up going into the time stream, he became Waverider, he traveled through time to stop Monarch, and this eventually led him to going as far as destroying Monarch's timeline in order to get rid of him. And he still failed. He destroyed Monarch's original timeline, and yet Monarch still managed to escape. So Waverider is being ridiculed by one of the Linear Men, who are men that make sure that time is good, so that nothing's wrong with time. So he's being ridiculed by this Linear Man, just like, you destroyed the entire timeline, and for what? Monarch is still alive, he's still out there. And then Waverider notices that there's stuff like there's like currents of time or something, just time distortions coming from the 20th century. And he's like, it always comes from the 20th century, and it's specifically coming from 1994. Maybe we should look into this. And as they talk about this, they see that Monarch, aka Hank Hall, is looking at them. He appears on their screen watching them. And so Hank Hall is trying to revive the timeline that Waverider had destroyed. So he puts on like his suit and he's got his technology, and he's going to try and, you know, go back in time and restore his timeline. And Waverider and the Linear Man know, like, this Linear Man, he basically just looks like, what's his name? From the X-Men? Scott Summers' son, Nathaniel Summers, what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? You know who I'm talking about. So Waverider and the Linear Man head back to 1994 in order to figure out what's going on. So they walk around a little bit to see, you know, what's the problem in 1994. And that's when they get blasted by a couple of beams, shot by a Monarch. And Waverider's like, you're causing the problems. And Monarch's just like, you mean time disruptions? I felt them, but they aren't my doing. And he's like, liar! And he makes contact with Monarch. And he's like, if I make contact with you, I'll be able to see your future. And what he sees, we don't get to see. But what he sees causes Waverider to freak out a lot. He's like, you're more of a threat then. And Monarch's just like, shut up! And shoots him in the face with a beam, knocking him out. Monarch's just like, you talk too much. There's work to be done. Places to go. People to see. Worlds to conquer. And that's where we end on that story. And so we end up in Sub-Zero Part 2, which was in Showcase Issue 9. So, in Part 2... Also, by the way, I remembered, Cable is who I was thinking of. They refer to this Linear Man as Hunter, which I didn't know his name yet. They refer to him as Hunter, which makes me wonder, is it supposed to be... I guess it's supposed to be Rip Hunter, the time traveler? But yeah, so Waverider and Hunter have been kidnapped by Monarch, and he begins traveling through time with them because he wants to get to the point where he can change his timeline to make sure that it doesn't get destroyed. But he can't travel through time very well. He can travel through time, but he kind of just bounces around. He needs a device that will help him travel through time properly, or somebody who can travel through time properly, like Waverider. But Waverider refuses to help him. And so Monarch brings them, like, bounces to a war-torn future where lasers and stuff are blasting everywhere. And so the lasers start blasting their field, and they manage to break out. And Monarch is just like, you're not getting away from me! And he starts trying to, like, blast Hunter. And, Hunter, like, Monarch's time travel device gets shot by a laser, which then causes it to malfunction, and they travel to the Ice Age, and then they travel to dinosaur times, and then they travel to 1990. Like, they're just bouncing around through time. They bounce to 1994, where Waverider shows up, and he's like, you want me? You got me. And Monarch's just like, yes, as I hoped. And Waverider grabs onto Monarch and tries to destroy him by overloading him with, like, chronal energy. But what he doesn't know is that Monarch is more powerful than he realizes, and actually has the ability to use, like, when making contact with Waverider, Monarch has learnt how to use Waverider's abilities and look into his own past. And by looking into his own past, he discovers that Hawk and Dove are descendants of the Lords of Chaos and Order, and that when Hawk killed Dove, he didn't just become Monarch, he absorbed Dove's, like, essence and power of order, and so he is now risen above, beyond Hawk and Dove, beyond Monarch, and he transforms into a new being and redubs himself Extant. And Extant basically just looks like if you took Magneto and just made him really 90s, like just super 90s, full face mask, with a purple flowing cape. Like, that's always what I thought of when I saw Extant. I was like, that's just like a weird design for Magneto. that wouldn't have lasted very long. But now he's extant, and now he's going to, recreate. Like he's not just going to recreate his own timeline. He has bigger ambitions now that we don't know about yet. But he takes Waverider's armband, which the linear men use to travel through time, and then heads off, because now that he has this wristband, he can travel wherever he wants and do it correctly. And so Extant gets away, and Hunter is just like, no, do you know what he can do with that device? And so he tries to, he gets so angry at Waverider that he starts fighting him, and Waverider's just like, stop it, fighting isn't going to help anything. Do you know the time stream? Do you know how the time stream was, altered? And Hunter's just like, I researched today's events as they should have been. I saw us battling Monarch and saw him die while fighting us. Instead, he's become more powerful. Like, what have we done? And Hunter's just like, what you've done is create a monster. For all we know, the extant might change all time. And we're left with Waverider just being like, if true, we stand on the verge of a true crisis. And so that's our setup. And you can start reading 0 Hour now, but we're not going to do that. Now that we've finished this, we're going to be reading Flash issue 92, because that's also got some setup for 0 Hour. So yeah, that was the showcase issues, a little bit of a prologue, and next we're going to be reading Flash issues 92 to 94. So yeah. Alright, so Flash, issue 92, written by Mark Waid, with art by Mike Wieringo and Jose Mazen Jr. If you remember, the last issue of The Flash ended with two people coming from the future, going back in time to the year 1994. It was Iris, Alan, and a mysterious young-looking person. So this issue begins with, Linda Park. She's investigating these, snake cults. These cults, apparently there are, cults of young people gathering together and worshipping snakes. She goes to visit this tenant who tells her all about it, how he had a bunch of kids living in his place, and one day he came in and they were doing, weird rituals with snakes, and they all looked at him with an evil glare, and then the next day they were gone, and he lost out on a month's worth of rent. So he goes to open up a closet because he'd seen that they'd been using it. And when he opens it up, a bunch of snakes come out and they all kill him. And he's like, help me! Ah! And Linda's just watching in horror at this man just get devoured by snakes. And then we cut to Wally. It's like a day later or a few days later. Wally is playing basketball by himself with a million basketballs. Or one basketball, and it just looks like he's throwing it a million times, and he's just just playing basketball. While Linda is investigating the snake cult, and Wally's just like, "Are you still doing this whole cult thing? I don't think it's really that relevant anymore because, we haven't really heard from these cults have come and then they've just left. Isn't that a good thing?" And Linda's like, "Yeah, but the fact that they're all leaving at the same time, it has to mean something. There's something more to this." And she drops a bunch of her papers, and Wally picks them up with super speed, and he looks at one of them, and it's a threat at Linda. And Linda's just like, "Wally, it's nothing. All right, you don't have to feel like you need to protect me all the time. I can take care of myself. It's just a threat." And Wally's like, "Are you sure? There's nothing I like doing more than just protecting you." And Linda's like, "I know, but sometimes you just gotta let me protect myself." And then as they're talking, Wally sees a flash blast past him, something that he can't see. It's going so fast. And he grabs Linda and he heads off with her. And they head back to, because he just kind of shrugs it off. He's like, "Oh, whatever." And they head back to their house. And when they get there, there's a woman there. And Wally instantly recognizes her. It's Iris. It's like, "Oh my god, Aunt Iris. I can't believe I've seen you. It's you." And Iris is like, "Wait, shouldn't you think I'm dead?" And Wally's like, "No, I knew you were alive because I found your memoir, like the life story of the Flash. And that's when we reveal that, like, what he saw in the book was Iris being alive. Remember that? And so Iris says, like, I didn't come here alone. I came here with my grandson. And I need you to save him because he's going to die. And so Iris sits down with Wally and Linda and explains everything. How when she died, her conscious was sent to the future where a new body was created for her. And then Barry was sent to the future and she spent time with him. And Wally's like, Barry was alive? Like, in the future? And he's like, is he still alive? And she was like, no. He was alive for a month, and then the crisis happened, unfortunately. But before he died, we had kids. Don and Dawn Allen. And they became heroes in the future. They saved the Earth from the Dominators. And they had a kid. And his name was Bart Allen. And he was born with speed powers. Like, a lot of speed powers. He's really fast. Don and Dawn had, like, slight speed. But they were not nearly as fast as, like, the Flash and stuff. But Bart has a lot of speed. And because he has the speed in him, he was kidnapped as a baby by the Dominators. Like, he was taken by them. Not kidnapped, but taken by them. And he was kidnapped. He was kidnapped, experimented on, and then saved by the forces of the future. But then they decided to keep Bart in, like, a little, like, VR thing to rate his growth and stuff, because they wanted to groom him to become a hero. Which no kid should have to suffer through, because he never got to see the outside world, he never got to have friends or anything. But the problem is, unlike Wally, Bart's metabolism hasn't slowed down and instead has kept getting faster. And because of this, because it never ends, his metabolism, he's been growing at an exponential rate. So at like 2 years old, he already had the body and mind of a 12-year-old. So by the end of the week, he could be dead. Like, he's got, like, and so Wally figures out that the person he saw was Bart, because when Iris and Bart came back from the future, they got split up in the time stream, and so Bart has just ended up somewhere else. And that's when Wally figures out that the thing that ran past him was Bart. And so Wally is like, he's here. I saw him, and I let him get away. That won't happen again. So Wally tries to pinpoint where Bart is so that he can go and get him. And he contacts the Justice League and the Titans to try and help him, and they can't find any remnants of Bart to figure out where he is. He connects to all the radio stations, and that's when he sees that in a town there was a tornado that had ripped through out of nowhere, and Wally figures that it's not a tornado, it's actually Bart. And he tells Linda to stay behind. He looks at the threat, and it reminds him of, like, how Linda's life is in danger, and he's like, you can't come with me, because at the speed I'm going, you'll get ripped apart. And Linda understands. She decides not to go with him, and Wally leaves Linda and Iris behind, and runs after the trail that Bart has been leaving behind, the trail of destruction. He follows the trail, and he ends up at a cliff where he sees Bart, and he's like, I don't know what to expect when I confront him. Bart? And that's when Bart turns around and he looks at Wally. And he's like, but this isn't. My God, he's trying to kill me. And Bart starts, like, attacking Wally. And then we cut to Linda talking about the snake cult. And then her boss comes up to her and is like, look, I don't think that this is a story that you should be covering anymore. And Linda's like, but somebody needs to cover it, because they're definitely out there. And he's like, well, if they are, you gotta be careful, because they could be watching this broadcast right now, and you might be putting your life in danger. And as he says this, the leader of the snake cult is watching. His name is Cobra, and he's watching from his base, ready to take action. And that's where we live. We leave on this cliffhanger of Wally being attacked by Bart, and Cobra preparing to deliver on his threat towards Linda. So, issue 93, this time it's drawn by Carlos Pacheco. Michael Ingo is away for this issue. So, Wally and Bart are having a scuffle throughout the valleys. Bart is pummeling Wally, and Wally believes the only way to snap Bart out of it is to give him a good smack. So he smacks Wally to get Bart out of it. Is what I meant. Is what I think I said. Wally decides that he needs to give Bart a good smack, so he smacks Bart across the face. Bart's just like, "What did you do that for?" And then he runs away, and Wally's just like, "Bart, wait! Crap, I thought I was just going to get him out of it, but it turns out now he's terrified." And so he runs after Bart in order to catch up to him, because if he doesn't, Bart will end up aging into an old man, because he's going too fast. And he won't stop. So Linda leaves her network. Meanwhile, Linda leaves the network with her bosses warning her about, the story that she's trying to run. And she gets to her car, and inside are a bunch of snakes. And then this samurai man who works for the Cobra cult jumps out of nowhere and tries to kill Linda. And that's when who shows up? Argus. Argus frickin' shows up, which I was not expecting. He shows up, he's just like, "Hey Linda, I'm here to save you, let's go." And they jump on his motorcycle and they ride off. If you don't know, Argus is from Bloodlines, and he's appeared in a previous issue of The Flash, and now he's back. Mark Waid keeps bringing him back, which is surprising. It's like he actually wants to use him. So Bart is just going crazy, smashing through the city, and then he finally gets hit by the trauma of going too fast, where he's run out of energy, and now by a sheer force of will, he is pushing himself to keep running fast, and this is now causing him pain. It's what Wally refers to as he's seizing up. So he decides that in order to help Bart push through this, he gives Bart a massive push of speed to try and push Bart to the breaking point of actually, going as fast as he possibly can. And it causes Bart to smash through the sound barrier, leaving Wally in shock, because he's like, "Oh my god, what have I done? Have I hurt Bart more than help him?" And we're kind of left on a little bit of a cliffhanger that we'll get back to later, and we'll see, did it work? Did it help Bart? Is he cured? Meanwhile, Linda and Argus are on their motorcycle. They head back to Wally's house, being chased by these samurai men. They try to land, but Linda shifts her weight, and Argus is like, "What are you doing? Don't shift your weight!" And they just smash into the ground, and Argus is just like, "Ugh!" And then he gets knocked out for the rest of the issue. And Linda's just like, oh yeah, Linda called Piper on the phone earlier and was just like, "Hey Piper, you gotta get here, we're being chased by a samurai dude." So Piper shows up after they smash, because the samurai cobra dude is about to kill them, and then Piper hits him with a soundwave blaster from this big gun that he's built. And then he grabs Argus's body with Linda, and they carry him inside, where they find Iris. And Piper's just like, "Iris is still alive?" And Linda's like, "Yeah, we don't have time to talk about that. We gotta get this guy some help. These Cobra men are probably gonna show up again and hurt us." And one of them is actually watching them from outside. One of them, they brought in the other one. Piper, what I meant is that the samurai guy that attacked them, Piper used, a thing on him to, put him in, a frozen state, and so they keep him in the house frozen, which obviously will lead to bad things, because he obviously breaks out. So the Cobra Man breaks out of his imprisonment, and he attacks Linda and Piper and Iris, and he knocks Piper out, and so Linda tries to go and get the files so that Cobra can't get to them, because Piper suggests that she just give it to them, and she's like, "No, it's too big of a story." So the Cobra Samurai attacks her, and then another one shows up and attacks her as well. And then Iris gets attacked by one of the Samurai Cobra men, and Linda comes up behind him and smacks him over the head with a fire hydrant, knocking him out. And then there's still two more there. There's just a bunch that are showing up, and they're surrounded. And then a mystical speeding force comes in and grabs the two Cobra men and ties them up. And it's Bart Allen. And Iris and Bart reunite. And they're like, if that's Bart, then where's Wally? And Wally comes up with a couple of other Cobra men. And is like, just running a little behind. And then he and Linda kiss, and Wally reveals what happened with Bart, where by pushing Bart to the breaking point and forcing Bart to hit his highest speed, therefore breaking through, like, the sound barrier or the fabric of existence himself, he came out born anew like a phoenix, and is no longer uncontrollably fast. He's a lot better now. He's healing. He's not fully healed yet, but he's going to heal, and he will hopefully stop aging. But yeah, he's no longer uncontrollable anymore, and he can actually run at the right speed. But his personality is still incredibly impulsive. And so when a Cobra lieutenant shows up and says, like, I'm the Cobra lieutenant, and the reason why the samurai men attacked you is because they work for Cobra, and he wants your files and your story. Bart is just like, you won't hurt Iris, I won't let you, and he runs at the lieutenant and smashes into him, and they both disappear in a blinding light. And that's it. It ends on a cliffhanger. Bart and the Cobra lieutenant both disappear, and Wally is just left in shock. And we'll find out what happened to him in the next issue. Issue 94. Alright, so issue 94. At the end of the last issue, Bart disappeared alongside the Cobra lieutenant, but it turns out that he didn't disappear through time or anything. He just accidentally vibrated through the wall, and it was just an impulse of his. He went through it, and Wally's just like, how did he do that? How did he just get through the wall without even trying? He runs to the other side of the house, and he catches Bart as Bart throws through the wall, and they end up in Gotham. That's how fast they tumble. They just tumble all the way to Gotham. And then Iris shows up, and Wally's just like, Bart vibrated through the wall. Like, and I don't know how he did it. We're gonna have to figure it out later. And that's when Argus shows up, and it's just like, hey, like, the guys that attacked you, they work for Cobra. I'm gonna go stop them. And Wally's like, I'm going with you. And Argus is like, nope, doing it by myself. See ya. I don't work up with other people. And he runs away. And Wally's just like, what an ass. And Iris is just like, are you jealous? And so they head back home with Bart. And Iris and Wally just talk to each other about Bart and about, you know, their powers and stuff, and over a cup of tea. And that's when Wally is like, actually, this is the perfect time to bring up something that I've been meaning to ask you. When I was young, about 9 years old, a man approached me who called me his uncle, like my uncle. He said he was an uncle. And he told me that I have a lot to live up to and that he believes in me. Who is that man? And Iris is like, look, Wally, honestly, I don't know. And so we're still left with this mystery of, like, who is this mysterious man? It's not Matt Mercury. So who is it going to be? And so Iris asks Wally in order to become Bart's mentor, because Bart is so impulsive at the moment and he needs somebody to teach him how the world works so that he doesn't go out there and get himself killed. And Wally just does not want to be Bart's mentor. He doesn't want a sidekick. He's not a sidekick guy, as he says. He's like, Iris is living in the past, in the retro times, because I don't do sidekicks. And so Bart wants to come with Wally because they get a call from Argus. Argus has found the Cobra headquarters, and so Wally's going to go there and check it out, because apparently they're at like a warehouse is where they've been seen. And Bart wants to go with him, and Wally's just like, no, you're not coming with me, I'm going by myself. Meanwhile, a mysterious being appears outside their door. Looks kind of like Matt Mercury. I think it's like him, because it kind of looks like his silhouette. So he shows up outside of the house when Wally leaves, and Bart tries to go with him, and he grabs Bart, and he's like, no. And then he heads off, and he goes to the warehouse, and that's when he discovers that the warehouse is actually an illusion, and that it's really the Cobra headquarters. So he heads into the Cobra headquarters, and he decides to eavesdrop on the lieutenant inside, and as he's eavesdropping, Bart shows up and starts beating the crap out of Cobra leaders, and Wally's just like, crap, alright, he ruined my plan. I guess I'm just going to beat up guys with him so that he doesn't get himself hurt. And so he and Bart team up against the Cobra guys. And as they're running, they notice that the lieutenant has been cut down by somebody, like literally cut in half by a mysterious being with a laser rifle, like a laser gun. And he shoots the laser and it starts bouncing around all these different walls, creating a massive laser grid that Wally gets stuck in between. And luckily, Bart doesn't get stuck in the laser grid because he throws Bart and Bart vibrates through a nearby wall, getting away. And it is revealed that the man who has trapped Wally in all these lasers is Abracadabra. And that Abra arrived at the warehouse after their last battle and infiltrated the headquarters and was basically waiting for Wally to show up because he knew he'd show up someday to try and stop him. So he's waiting, and now he has Wally caught in a trap. And Wally can't get out of these lasers because he's not fast enough to get through lasers. He tries, and they burn his arm. And as he's talking to Abra, something weird happens. Abra suddenly changes and looks like his classic self. And then he changes again, and he looks like he's got like a new costume. He's like, what's going on? And he drops the laser gun, and that allows Wally to escape from the lasers. And he's like, whatever it is, I hope it hurts. Oh no. No disappearing out for you. You're not getting away. And he grabs Abra, and that's when, like, the world starts shifting around them. And Abra's like, I feel like time is shifting around me. And they realize that they're in the future. And then a blinding flash. They're in the 64th century at the moment. And a blinding flash appears in front of them. And Waverider appears in front of Flash and Abracadabra. And Wally is left thinking, like, I don't know what's going on, but I think we've found out. Like, I think we've found what's causing this. And we're left with a to be continued in issue 4 of 0 Hour. Because as you know, as I said earlier, 0 Hour counts down from issues 4 to 0. So next, we're going to be starting 0 Hour with issue 4. Alright, here we are. 0 Hour, Crisis in Time, issue 4. Let's just get straight into it because there's a lot that goes on. So we start off at the end of time with a being known as the Trapper, who was attacked by a mysterious being shooting time beams at him because he wants to take over the end of, like, this mysterious person wants to take over the end of the time, and in order to do that, they need to get rid of the Trapper. So they kill the Trapper, and then they're just like, yes, now it's time for the countdown to 0 Hour, and they unleash this massive power from the end of time that begins making its way through time, eating it, destroying it. Metron, who is a being who can see everything, goes, like, through his Mobius chair, goes to see Darkseid and tells him of this thing that's going on, and Darkseid doesn't believe him because he's like, if time is being destroyed, then I would know, because I know everything. So Metron decides to leave and find other people that can help him. The Joker is causing trouble in Gotham, and he gets stalked by Batgirl, which is weird because Barbara Gordon is currently in a wheelchair, and Batman and Robin arrive, and they realize how weird it is that Batgirl's here. So it seems like there's a time-displaced Batgirl in Gotham City. The Joker manages to get away in his helicopter, and Batman decides that he's going to call Superman because he knows that something's going wrong. And Robin is like, if there's something going wrong with Batgirl, then what's happening to anyone? Like, is this happening to anyone else? Meanwhile, at the Vanishing Point, which is the home of the Guardians and the Linear Men outside of the time stream, some of the Linear Men, including Hunter and Waverider, are there. One of them is named Matthew, which makes me believe that maybe it's Matthew Ryder. So, like, the current Waverider, I think, is Matthew, but then he's also working alongside a version of himself, who is a Linear Man. They're talking about the crisis that's going on with the end of time. So they go and visit the Flash and Abracadabra, who are currently in the far future, in order to see if the Flash can use his speed to stop this, like, this stuff, like, destroying time. So the idea is that Wally is going to create a vortex at super speed and then run through the vortex that he created at ultra speed, and that should stop this whole thing. And so he tries to do that, and in doing so, he runs so fast that just like Barry Allen, he just completely disintegrates and dies. And Waverider's just like, no! Not again. It happened again. So yeah, Wally's dead. That happened. So Batman and Superman meet up and they figure out what's... they talk about how, weird shit's going on. And then Metron shows up and is like, hey, I'll explain everything to you. And so Waverider and Hunter head to another future in the year 5700. In this future, Green Lantern from the 60s came and he became a man known as Paul Manning, who was their warrior. He got amnesia and he believed that he was somebody else called Paul Manning. So these people in the future have grabbed that version of Hal Jordan and brought them to his future. So when, to their future. So when Waverider and Hunter get there, the old 60s, Hal Jordan is there trying to protect them from time, but he fails and their time gets eaten up. And Hunter, unfortunately, gets eaten up with it. And Waverider barely makes it out of there with Wally's costume. He's still got Wally's costume, by the way. He's like, I don't know for sure what Hunter was... Before, he gets eaten up, Hunter is just like, this is just like what happened with the Crisis. The Crisis! And then he gets disintegrated, and Waverider's just like, I wonder what Hunter was talking about with... What's this Crisis that he's talking about? Vandal Savage is fighting Hawkman, and when he's fighting Hawkman, he suddenly sees a bunch of Hawkmen in front of him. He's like, whoa, why are there so many of you? And Hawkman's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And these are all the different versions of Hawkman throughout the history of DC, because Hawkman at the moment is incredibly complicated. There's a million versions of him. So yeah, Vandal Savage thinks he's going crazy seeing all these Hawkmen. Kyle Rayner has just become Green Lantern at this time. His girlfriend has just died. And before he can go and find the killer, Superman appears in front of him and is like, hey, Kyle, you're in an event now. I know you haven't been Green Lantern for very long, but welcome to Zero Hour. We need your help in order to broadcast myself via a Green Lantern construct hologram to everyone in the universe so we can get their help during this event. So he does exactly that. Superman has a Green Lantern construct hologram version of himself, go throughout the world, asking everyone for help. Green Arrow's just like, nah, great, something else to worry about. Meanwhile, this guy named Dr. Mist, who is this omnipotent being, appears throughout time. Different versions of him start appearing, so he knows that something's going wrong. I don't know if that's actually going to mean something later, but it happens. So after Superman has given his little speech to everyone in the world and recruited them all, Metron goes to get the help of the Spectre, and the Spectre's like, screw you, get out of here. I'm not helping. I only stop evil, not time eaters. So Waverider heads back to the linear, to the vanishing point, in order to find out what Hunter was talking about. So he goes through the Linear Men's records, and that's when he sees the Crisis on Infinite Earths for the first time. Up until this point, canonically, the Linear Men are the only people that remembered the Crisis happening and can see it, or other than Psycho Pirate, and have seen it and watched it. And now Waverider has seen it too, so he knows what's going on. The Justice Society of America meet up with Hawkman, who has Vandal Savage. They don't know what Vandal Savage is talking about when they talk about multiple Hawkmen, but apparently they're gone now, and it's just the regular Hawkman now. And then Vandal Savage starts screaming in pain, and he disappears. He gets eaten up by time, I guess because he's immortal, so enough versions of him have been eaten up throughout time that he himself has ceased to exist. Alan Scott, the other members of the team, notice that Alan Scott is younger now. Why is he younger? Because of the time distortions. They made him younger. It's not really anything more to explain than that. Waverider shows up and is like, hey, I've got to explain everything to you. Oh, Jay, by the way, Wally's dead. And he shows Jay Wally's death, and Jay's just like, no! How? And so while Waverider explains everything to the JSA, Extant shows up at the vanishing point. He's like, I am extant, and now it's mine. And so, like, you know, he's taken over the vanishing point, and he is talking about how chaos itself is his now. So what is he referring to? I guess we'll find out. Alright, 0 Hour, issue 3. I forgot to mention this is written by Dan Jurgens, with art by Dan Jurgens, and finished art by Jerry Ordway. So, Jay Garrick is upset that Wally is dead, and he's like, how many more young people need to die while us oldies continue to live? It's not fair. It's not fair on them. So, the Justice Society of America decide that they're going to work together in order to find who's doing this, and the best way to do that is to go to the vanishing point, which is where everything started, or is probably going down. So they use Dr. Fate's magic in order to transport to the vanishing point, but while they're transporting, something happens that stops Hawkgirl, Hawkman, and Waverider from transporting with them. Meanwhile, Superman and Metron are heading to New York in order to meet with all the heroes that they've called together. But on their way there, they see that Central City is being attacked by dinosaurs. And when they head there, they find Impulse, Bart Allen, fighting dinosaurs. And Superman offers his help, and Impulse is like, nope, I got it handled. It's all good. Also, don't call me Kid Flash, because he comes in and he's like, hey, kid. And Impulse is like, if you call me Kid Flash, you know, I'll smack you, like, I'll kick your butt, because my name's Impulse. So Impulse vibrates through a wall, and the dinosaurs smash into it, knocking themselves out. And then he agrees to help Superman. And he's like, hey, I'm just looking for my cousin. You know what happened to him? So Bart at the moment doesn't know what's happened to Wally. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what happens when he finds out Wally's dead. Meanwhile, the time trapper kidnaps a future version of Cosmic Boy. Because there are two versions of Cosmic Boy that appear in this comic. A future older version and the regular teenage version. So he kidnaps the future older version and takes him away, and then reveals to him that he is also Cosmic Boy, but a future version. He's like, you should become me because it's awesome. And Cosmic Boy is just like, no, I'll never become you. And I think this is just a trick by the Time Trapper, because the Time Trapper is known to change his identity multiple times to get what he wants and to protect himself. So I think he's just pretending to be Cosmic Boy. It's kind of their way of explaining, retconning his identity. So the heroes all meet up in New York, and, you know, they need to figure out what's going on. And so they all decide that Superman's going to be their leader, because they need to find the guy that's doing this. And in order to find the guy that's doing this, they're going to have to figure out where he is. And he's probably at the vanishing point, so they got to figure out how to get to the vanishing point as well. Meanwhile, the Justice Society of America, the JSA, I'll just call them the JSA from now on because it's easier. They get to the vanishing point, and they're just like, hey, where's Hawkman and, like, where's the Hawks and Waverider? And then X-Dan is like, their location isn't relevant right now because I'm here to destroy you. And he starts blasting all of the Justice Society, the JSA. Meanwhile, the Hawks and Waverider find out that they're currently in the middle of the time stream, and the reason why they're not with the rest is because the other versions of Hawkman and Hawkgirl are all there, causing time distortions, and they all fuse together to become the god of the Hawks, whose name I don't know because they don't mention the name of this god, but it's the one that created Hawkman. They all fuse together into this thing, and so Hawkgirl and Hawkman go to fight this god alongside one of the other Hawkmen, and they all fuse together, becoming a god, including Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl fuses, they all fuse together. All of the Hawkgirls, all of the Hawkmen fuse into one single Hawkman who is a god and whose name we don't know. Later on, he'll show up and be like, Metron will be like, his name is no longer Kato Hall, it is, and then before he can finish, Hawkman is like, I don't know what my name is at the moment, but all I know is that I'm here to help. So it's like Dan Jurgens just didn't even come up with a name for this new guy. Throughout the universe, different people are seeing what's going on. The High Father, Brainiac 2 are all seeing these things going on. Brainiac 2 is the leader of Legion. The heroes start talking about the time distortions and how they've been seeing different versions of each other. And then Hawkman shows up with Metron and Waverider. And that's when Waverider explains to them that what's going on is another crisis. And he explains how there was a crisis, a previous one that went on, because nobody remembers that. And he's like, hey, you don't remember, but like there was a crisis that happened before, and it's happening again. So somebody's obviously doing something. We gotta find out who, and we gotta stop them. He explains to them that, like, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, a younger version of him, is dead, and Guy Gardner is like, if a younger version of him died, then does that mean the villain version of him also died? Because if that's the case, we could use this as an opportunity to save Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps by doing this. Like, maybe if we stop time from being destroyed, Hal Jordan will come back as a good guy, and, you know, he's just like spitballing. And then Waverider realizes who is probably doing this. It's like somebody I haven't considered. Extant. He's obviously figured out it's Extant. Extant is still with the JSA, and he just starts blasting them with his powers. He kills the Atom, and like he kills Atom Smasher, and then he kills Dr. Fate as well. Like, just blasts him and kills him. And then Wildcat and Sandman attack him, and he just ages them rapidly and kills them. And then Waverider senses what's going on with Extant, and so he goes to help the JSA. Most of them are dead, except for Jay and Owlman, Dr. Midnight, and Alan Scott, Green Lantern. So Waverider shows up after Extant has killed Owlman and Dr. Midnight by aging them. So yeah, he shows up to help Green Lantern fight Extant. Meanwhile, the 25th century, where Booster Gold comes from, appears in the sky and starts colliding with their time. Metron's just like, time is colliding, and if we don't do something, it's gonna end. Like, we gotta do something now. So yeah, Waverider teams up with Green Lantern against Extant. But Green Lantern's ring runs out of power. Waverider puts the other members of the JSA in stasis so that he can figure out how to revive them and help them. And then Extant and Waverider get into a bit of an argument. And because he calls him Monarch, and Extant is like, I'm not Monarch. I'm Extant now. You haven't sensed the difference yet? I'm surprised. And Waverider's like, it can't be. And Monarch's like, you should have realized your fate and Monarch's. Mine. We're always linked. I'm much, much more than you think. And he pulls his mask off, and it turns out Extant is Waverider now. It doesn't really make any sense that he's suddenly Waverider, but I guess I hope Dan Jurgens explains why Monarch is Waverider now. But yeah, it ends with Waverider looking at himself. So yeah, Extant is Waverider. How is he Waverider? I guess we're about to find out in 0 Hour, Issue 2. Alright, 0 Hour, Issue 2. A lot happens in this one, so bear with me. So, Extant, after revealing that he looks like Waverider, reveals to Waverider that he absorbed Waverider's powers after absorbing Monarch, Hawk, and Dove to become Extant. Waverider's like, that's impossible. That didn't happen. And so Waverider goes to fight Extant, And Green Lantern's just like, Waverider, no, his power! If you could take out my ring, like, he could kill you! And Extant's just like, no, this isn't the time. Your battle is somewhere else. And he sends them all away, and then heads back to his base, where Extant is like, alright, my warriors, my armies, the war has begun. And we'll find out who his minions are later. So, the 25th century is crashing into regular New York. So Superman and Metron and a group of other heroes like Booster Gold have to team up in order to get rid of the 25th century and send it back to its own time. The city. How are they going to do that? Well, Metron can open a boom tube with his chair, and normally boom tubes can't teleport massive things, but if they use the powers of the heroes and Captain Atom, they might be able to make the boom tube big enough to create a rift large enough to send it back. So they try doing that, and it works. They send the city back to the 25th century, and when they land back in New York, that's when Waverider and the JSA are there. And sadly, you know, most of them have passed away. And at this point, Jay decides that he's just too old. And he just gives up being the Flash. He's like, that's it. This was my message. Like, this was my signal to stop. And he rips off his lightning bolt and he stops. And Starman gives up being Starman. And even though he's young, Alan is like, Extant got rid of the power of my Green Lantern ring so easily. Like, what's even the point of me continuing, even if I am young, you know? And so he gives the ring to Kyle and is like, take this into battle as memorabilia for me. Take this into battle for me. But that's it. Like, from now on, you're the only Green Lantern. And, so Alan Scott and Jay Garrick just give up being Green Lantern and Flash. And they would take Wildcat and Dr. Midnight to the hospital. Wildcat manages to pull through, like, he's stable, but Dr. Midnight passes away. And then Jay realizes at this point that, like, so many people have been dying that have always stood up for him, and that he needs to do that for them. So he heads off in order to help everyone by continuing to be the Flash, because Jay just can't stop. But Alan decides to stop. So in order to save everything, Waverider decides that they need to go to the past. Some of them need to go to the past, and some of them need to go to the future in order to save the present. So some of them go to the future, where they are attacked by members of the Team Titans. Now, the Team Titans are a future group of Teen Titans that created a team in the future. A bunch of teams in the future. There's a whole load of them, and they're all called the Team Titans. So it turns out Extant used their communicator devices in order to take over their minds. So he is using them as his minions. So they fight the Team Titans in the future, like Superman's group. Dr. Mist disappears because he's immortal and time is being destroyed. So like Vandal Savage, he disappears. Power Girl is pregnant at the moment, and she starts feeling like really painful. And then all of a sudden a force field appears around her, and she assumes that the baby created it and that it can sense that something's about to attack and that she's going to be in danger. And Extant is just talking about how, like, he sent out his minions to deal with everyone. The group in the past are trying to deal with a time rift that has appeared in the past. And, you know, some Team Titans show up there, and so they start fighting these evil Team Titans. And then Extant shows up, but it's a past version of Extant. It's not the future version of Extant. And he fights them, and he fights Waverider, and he sends a bunch of the heroes away back in time. Or Waverider does. So a bunch of them, like, a bunch of the heroes are about to get, like, erased by this time rift, and so Waverider decides to send them back to the present to save them. But he doesn't send back Oh yeah, he does send back all of them. I was gonna say he doesn't send back Kyle Rayner, but he does. Kyle Rayner drops Alan Scott's ring behind when he gets teleported away. And then after he teleports them away, Waverider gets attacked by the past version of Extant, who is still Hawk. And the past version of Extant absorbs Waverider into himself, and that's how he became the Waverider version of Extant. Are you with me? That's what happened. He's absorbed Waverider, and now he has Waverider's powers, and now he looks like Waverider underneath the mask. And then as he goes back to the present, the ring, Alan Scott's ring, is picked up by a mysterious being who says that he wants to take it as a trophy, and he'd rather take it as a trophy than watch it vanish. Meanwhile, in the future, Superman and his group have beaten the Teen Titans that attacked them, and now they need to stop the rift. So they use the Mobius chair and Captain Atom's powers to stop the rift, and this group succeeds. Where the other group failed to stop the rift, this one succeeds, and they save the future. And then they get back to the present, and they realize that the other guys failed, but maybe they can still succeed in beating Extant, even though the past has been destroyed. The present still exists, for now. Extant meets up with his past self, and then absorbs his past self. And then the mysterious being that picked up Alan Scott's ring goes to the future and then reopens the time rift because he believes that, because he's like, this time rift was supposed to happen, so I need to undo what those heroes did and reopen it. And he reopens it, and the future is destroyed, and he drops Alan Scott's ring so that it gets destroyed with it. He's like, couldn't let this just vanish, but no sense being reminded of a universe that will be no more. And so he, crushes Alan Scott's ring and then lets the future be destroyed completely. And that's where issue 2 ends. And so in the next issue, issue 1, apparently this is the end. It's not the end of Zero Hour, but it's the end of the universe, because the future has been destroyed, past has been destroyed, now all that's left is the present. What's going to happen? We're about to find out in issue 1. Alright, 0 Hour, issue 1. We're coming to the end. So, Supergirl, Guy Gardner, who is currently going by the name Warrior, he has a suit of armor on that can make weapons and stuff. Steel, and the 1960s Batgirl, the Batgirl before, or I guess it's the 70s Batgirl before she ended up in a wheelchair. They're all trying to escape from the time rift that is destroying everything. It's just through what was left of Coast City, which is nothing. Steel gets blasted by the time rift and just gets completely destroyed. And so Supergirl grabs Guy Gardner, and Batgirl is like, we gotta get out of here, and she uses her powers to fly away. Extant watches as the time rift continues growing, and he's just like, I wasn't expecting so many of these rifts to be opening up. I was only considering one. Why are there so many? And that's when he gets blasted by a shock of energy, and and then this mysterious person is like, that's because you're getting in my way. You took the opportunity to try and take what I started. Stay out of my way, Extant, or you'll feel my wrath. I will kill you if you continue to get in my way. Who is this mysterious person? We'll find out later. The Legion of Superheroes are with the Time Trapper in his little, curtain of time that's keeping them safe from the time rift, and he convinces them that they're just going to have to go into the time rift because, it's necessary for them to be erased, for the future to be saved. And they believe the Time Trapper. They choose to believe him, and so they voluntarily go into the time rift and get erased, because they believe that you know, it will lead to, like, it's supposed to happen, you know? It's going to lead to the universe being saved. This mysterious being who blasted Extant is still alive, by the way, who blasted Extant, blasts Timekeeper and kills him, and he's just like, you're the last person in the 30th century that exists, so goodbye, and he kills him. Power Girl is giving birth to her baby, who Wonder Woman is delivering. So the heroes are trying to figure out what they're going to do next. You know, where they need to go in order to stop what's going on. They're trying everything they can to stop these time rifts, and they're running out of ideas. Bart Allen disappears because the 30th century has just been eaten by the time rift. So he vanishes. And then Booster Gold disappears not long after. Because the 25th century has been eaten up as well. And then more time rifts appear in New York and start consuming New York. So they're running out of time. Gotham City is being destroyed by the time rift. Jay Garrick is running through Gotham City trying to find the Justice Society of America headquarters, which he finds. And he's gone there in order to get the help of the Spectre. He's like, Spectre, there's evil trying to destroy the universe. It's your time to help us. It's like, why did you even wait so long to help us? And Spectre is just like, because I couldn't do anything for the time that was coming. I had to wait for the world to actually be in danger and for evil to show themselves before I could act. And I'm going to get vengeance for your death, Jay. And Jay's just like, death? What are you talking about? And then he's just like, and he gets destroyed by the time rift. He just, like, ceases to exist. I don't know why he does. I guess maybe the time he was born in just got eaten up. But yeah, he disappears. Gotham City is being eaten up, and some of the heroes unite together, like Batman and Aquaman and stuff. And Captain Atom creates, like, an energy shield to try and keep them safe. And Metron is like, that's not going to be enough. Some of us are going to need to go to the vanishing point, which is outside of time, because that's the only place we're going to be safe. Because if all of us disappear, then none of us will be able to save, like, the world will not be able to be saved. So some of us are going to have to go to the vanishing point. So Metron, the Atom, Donna Troy, Superman, and Carl Rayner all go to the vanishing point to find Matthew Ryder, because Waverider is dead, but according to Metron, so apparently this version of Matthew Ryder in the main timeline didn't become Waverider, and that Waverider that we saw was a different Waverider. But he did become Waverider in an alternate timeline, which is the one that we know from Armageddon. So they're going to go and get that Waverider to come to their timeline to help them fight Extant. So they need to go and get the technology to build a time machine. So Carl Rayner and Superman go and do that, while the Atom and Metron stay behind to, you know, talk and stuff. Starman passes on his Star Rod to his son, David. His other son, Jack, is there. And Jack is just like, man, I'm glad you didn't give it to me. I don't want to be Starman. Extant continues killing people who are trying to stop the time rifts. And then he goes and finds Batman in Gotham City. He just appears, and Batman's just like, Extant! And Extant's just like, yep, I'm here to kill you. And he just kills Batman. He just, like, erases him. And Batman's just like, ah! And Nightwing and Robin are just like, no! And then Extant, like, kills Guy Gardner. He's just like, rah! And, like, just smashes Guy Gardner with energy. And Nightwing's just like, he's killing everyone! And so Green Arrow and the Guardian and Batgirl all come in and they start attacking Extant, and Green Arrow tries to shoot him with an arrow, but something hits Extant from behind that makes him miss, and it's Waverider. The Matthew Ryder version of Waverider shows up, ready to fight Extant. Atom tries to shrink into Extant's head, but because Extant is made out of chronal energy, it causes him to revert back to a it starts to cause him to revert back to protoplasm, but Waverider stops him from reverting, but he's too late, and like Atom, he stops reverting, but he becomes a teenager, so Atom is stuck as a teenager. And it's funny because after this he would become the leader of the new Teen Titans that Dan Jurgens would write after this, If you haven't read it, I recommend it. I read it. It's pretty good. Superman shows up to fight Extant, but then he gets punched in the face by someone. And it turns out the person who punched Superman in the face is Parallax, aka Hal Jordan. That's right, Parallax is here. He's the one behind everything, and his goal is to erase the entire universe and create a new one. So at the very end, everyone gets erased. The time rift destroys everything except for Parallax. And Parallax is left just like, I did it. Oh wait, no, it doesn't destroy everyone. It destroys the whole world, but like everyone, like Green Arrow and like the remaining heroes just exist in like this white space because Parallax has allowed them to. But yeah, the entire universe has been destroyed, and Parallax plans on remaking it because he sees it as the only way of saving the universe. The only way to save the universe is to create a new one in his image. And he even says to himself, he's like, but one world might not be enough. I might make some more. I'm probably going to want to make some more. You know, because it's never enough. And that's where it ends. That's the end of 0 Hour Issue 1. And so next, we go on to 0 Hour Issue 0. The final issue of the 0 Hour miniseries, but not the final issue of today's episode. Here we are, 0 Hour, Issue 0. So Parallax is here, he's told everyone what he's gonna do, and then he decides to tell them more in detail. So Guy Gardner didn't die. I thought he died, he didn't die. He just got really badly hurt. So Guy Gardner, Extant, Batgirl, the one that isn't in a wheelchair, and a character named Centurion, and then another character named what's his name? There's so many characters. Who cares? It doesn't matter who he is. He kind of looks like the Guardian. This is the first time I've ever seen it in a comic. Parallax is with these characters, and he's just like, I'm going to recreate the universe, and in this universe, I will create versions of all your worlds so that you won't disappear. So Batgirl, I'll create a version of your Gotham City. I'll create a version of your Metropolis Centurion. And so they all side with Parallax, except for Guy Gardner. They all side with Parallax, including Extant, because he's going to create worlds for them in his new reality. Meanwhile, Waverider and the remaining heroes that he has, like Superman, Kyle Rayner, and a new hero known as Damage, who just got his own series, so he has to be important in this event right at the very end. Seriously, Damage has not appeared in this at all. He's now here. I'm guessing it's an editorial thing where they were just like, hey, you gotta put Damage in this and make him really important. And Dan Jurgens was like, this is the last issue. And they were like, don't care, gotta put him in there. So they have got to find Parallax and stop him from destroying reality. And Waverider decides that the best way to do this is to recreate reality themselves. Stop Parallax from recreating reality and recreate their own reality. And so that's their plan. Go find Parallax and create their own reality. So as Parallax is talking about his maniacal plan, he's like, let's get it in motion. That's when the heroes, led by Waverider, arrive. Superman and everyone starts fighting Parallax. Extant and Batgirl and Centurion all team up against the heroes because they're on Parallax's side because they don't want to die and they don't want to lose their world and their friends and stuff. So it's heroes against heroes. Parallax starts getting the upper hand against everyone, and then Spectre shows up and he's like, foul murderer, the blood of your victim screams for vengeance. Let justice shackle you. And he creates a bunch of chains around Parallax, and Parallax is just like, ah! And then Green Arrow is just like, no, Corrigan, don't kill him. Please. He's still a good guy deep down. Spectre is just like, justice will not be denied. And Hal Jordan creates a giant version of himself to fight Spectre. Oliver Queen, like Green Arrow, tries to talk Hal down. He's just like, you gotta stop this. And Hal Jordan is just like, weren't you always telling me to get involved? And Green Arrow's just like, not like this, though. And Batgirl comes from behind him because she doesn't want Green Arrow to talk sense into him. She's like, no, I don't want to die. And Spectre is just like, you emerald hypocrite, you've condemned an infinite number of souls to death. And Parallax is like, they'll live again. And Spectre is like, it's not up to you to choose who lives and dies. And so yeah, they continue fighting each other. Hal badly injures Hawkman. Meanwhile, Waverider is just like, alright, all of you energy guys, like Kyle Rayner, Adam, like, absorb Green Lantern's light, channel it into me, and I will put it in Damage, because Damage has the ability to absorb energy and then explode with, like, nuclear power. So I will absorb the energy, channel it through Damage, and then he can hopefully have enough energy to defeat Parallax. Or at least leave him open. So Green Arrow kind of convinces Batgirl to finally, be on their side, or at least not fight them. She doesn't want to die, but she's also realizing just, like, that this isn't the way to do things. Carl Rayner fights Hal Jordan, leaving him open a little bit. But, like, Hal manages to break out of Carl Rayner's grasp. Then Damage absorbs all of the energy that Waverider has absorbed. And, Hal Jordan sees that he's absorbing the energy, and he's like, sorry, Damage, but I'm gonna have to kill you because I can't let you stop me. And he blasts a bunch of energy at Damage, and Batgirl jumps in the way and gets shot by the energy, and she dies. And that pushes Oliver over the edge. He's just like, no. And Parallax is just like, she'll live again in my universe. Everything will be right. This won't stop me. And Kyle Rayner's just like, oh, he's distracted. This is my chance. And Oliver Queen grabs his bow and arrow, and he's like, no. And Hal Jordan is like, Oliver. And Oliver Queen is like, Hal. And Kyle Rayner is just like, wait, I got him. And Parallax is just like, no. And then Oliver shoots an arrow straight into Parallax's heart. And he's just like, Oliver, power not enough. And then Damage can't hold on to the energy anymore, and he lets it go, and using all of the energy, he, I guess it's just enough energy to force out Parallax's power and replace his power with Damage's, and so with Damage's power, it creates their new reality. It creates a new reality along with the help of Spectre. And yeah, new reality is created. All of time is destroyed. A new reality is created by Spectre and Damage. And because the Big Bang just happened, Waverider, a new Big Bang just happened, Waverider has grabbed everyone and taken them out of the time stream so that they don't get destroyed by the Big Bang. But unfortunately, Carl Rayner and Hal Jordan didn't get out in time, and so the Big Bang just blasted them away to God knows where. So right now, they are presumed to be dead. So the entire universe is recreated, and Oliver Queen is just upset at the fact that not only has Batgirl died, but he also killed his best friend, which is pretty awful. Waverider also realizes that they're stuck in a time loop because they're outside of the time. They're outside of time at the moment, so they are an anomaly. So they have to re-enter the time stream so that they can make everything normal again. So they use time magic to re-enter the time stream, and everything's good now. Hal Jordan and Carl Rayner are presumed dead, but everyone else is okay. There are a couple of side effects, though. Guy Gardner was fused with his armor, and so now it's a part of him. And so now he's become the worst version of Guy Gardner, which is Warrior, the, alien armor human hybrid with tattoos all over his body and stuff. I really hate this design. It's so bad. This isn't Guy Gardner. I always look at this version of Guy Gardner, I'm just like, that's not Guy. That's somebody else. And it would be years before he would ever go back to being normal, sadly. So yeah, everyone's all good. Everyone's united. Anyone who died outside of the time stream is dead forever. So they are. It's presumed Wally is dead at the moment, and I'm curious how he's gonna come back. We'll probably find out in Mark Waid's Flash. Probably in Flash issue 0. Power Girl has given birth to her baby, so she's like, oh, at least we've got, the answer. Like, we've got life. That's good. That's a miracle. We should feel great. And Oliver's just like, right. And he just walks away from everyone, and he walks inside, like, a museum or something, and just smashes his bow over the wall, just breaks it to smithereens. And then he thinks about him and Hal, and he's just like, ah! And he just screams, like, into the heavens. And then we're left on, like, a mysterious person in a robe. I don't know what that's going to lead to. It's probably not going to lead to anything that I'm reading. But that's how 0 Hour ends. Or at least that's how the mini-series ends. There is a little bit of an epilogue with Flash issue 0 and Green Lantern issue 0. And that's what we're going to be covering next. So, yeah, let's get straight into those before we finish off 0 Hour entirely. Alright, time for Flash issue 0. Probably one of the most important Flash issues to Wally West at the moment. We finally learn the answer to who the mysterious uncle is that visited Wally when he was 8 years old. And I'm just going to say, while I was reading this issue, before the big reveal happened, it dawned on me and I figured it out. And I was right. And I was not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I did actually end up figuring out who it is. So, during 0 Hour, Wally was completely erased from time. He's kind of stuck in between time. He's lost his costume, but he's not naked. He's wearing a very thin suit over his skin, and looking at, like, the art, it just makes me believe that, like, Wally was originally intended to be naked, or at least only wearing underwear for this whole issue, because the suit that he's wearing is almost the same color as his skin, so it's like they drew him naked originally, and then DC were like, no, he can't be naked this whole issue, he needs to have, a suit on. Because, like, it's just, he looks like he's wearing one of those, like, fake naked suits. So yeah, he starts falling through time, and he eventually lands in 1994, Tuesday, and it's a Tuesday. He thinks that he's back in his regular time, but then it turns out that he's actually landed in last Tuesday, the Tuesday before he died. So he sees himself fighting crime, fighting a team known as Team Turmoil, who I guess are kind of like a bit of a parody of the Fantastic Four, which Mark Waid would eventually end up writing. So his past self fights the Team Turmoil, but his past self gets, like past Wally West, like, gets distracted by Linda Park, because obviously he's in love with her, and, like, a guy almost gets shot because of it, and Wally is just like, hey, like, the guy's gonna get shot, and, like, nobody can hear him because he's invisible at the moment, no one can see him. And, luckily his past self, at the last minute, stops all the bullets, saves his girl, saves Linda. And then Wally sees Max Mercury and sees that he's there. And he's like, why is Max here? Like, what is he doing here? And he also feels like Max can kind of sense him, but he can't see him. But before he can get an answer out of Max or any kind of reason as to why he's there, Wally gets vaulted further into the past. He sees different memories. He sees, Barry's death. He sees Barry. He sees himself when he was a Teen Titan. And then he ends up in the lab where he got his powers, and he watches himself get his powers. Only this time, he's solid. He realizes, like, he's actually, like, the more he travels through time, the more he's able to actually interact with time. So people still can't see him, but he is solid now. So yeah, he watches himself get zapped by lightning, and then he disappears again, and ends up going even further back in time, where he ends up at the West family reunion. He realizes that he's become like fully solid. He grabs like a pair of clothes and stuff and goes into the party. And he enters his house and he notices that Wally has just had, like, his younger self has just had his dad is treating him like shit. Like, Wally is a big fan of the Flash, and his dad is just like, you gotta stop drawing the Flash and start actually doing something that's going to progress you in life. And Wally goes to his room to cry. And so his older self, older Wally, comes through and he's like, hey, this is the day that mysterious man came and talked to me, which means I'm going to get to see him. I'm finally going to find out who it is. And he enters the room and no one's in there except for Wally. And he's like, wait, where is he? It's me. I'm the mysterious uncle. Like, I'm the man that I gave myself the confidence back then. And that's the big reveal. It was Wally the whole time. I figured it out today. I was reading it and I was like, it's himself. Of course. So he just walks in and, like, he doesn't even have to think of what to say. It just comes naturally. So he talks to his younger self. He's just like, big Flash fan. Like, I'm a big Flash fan too. You should never let your dreams go. You should follow your dreams. Like, listen to me, Wally. It's very important that you do that. And Wally listens to him and he's like, yeah, like, that's awesome. Like, thank you. Like, he's just really happy that, like, he doesn't know that it's his future self, but he's really happy that his future self is, like, telling him all this stuff. And then Wally finishes their conversation by drawing a picture of the Kid Flash costume, a picture of Kid Flash on the page, which is important in a way that, like, because when Wally became Kid Flash, originally he had just an exact same costume as Barry Allen. Like, he just looked the same. But eventually, his speed kind of went out of control, and he, like, traversed, like, another dimension, and when he came out, he got a new costume. Like, his speed, like, started affecting his body, and then it created a new costume for him. And this, I'm pretty sure, basically says that, like, the way he even came up with that costume in his mind to fabricate it out of nothing was because his older self drew the costume and gave it to him. So that's kind of Mark Waid retconning that and being like, well, the reason why Wally created that specific look with the yellow and red, that classic Kid Flash costume, is because his future self gave him the idea by drawing it, which I think is really cool. It's a really cool way of retconning how he even came up with that costume. And so, yeah, Wally leaves the party, and he's a lot happier now, and he's like, yeah, like, I've got a lot to look forward to. I know who I am. I've got my whole future ahead of me, and that gives him the confidence. Not only did he give his younger self confidence, but by giving himself his younger self confidence, he gave himself the confidence to run fast enough that he travels back through time and that he's probably going to end up home again. We won't know until the next issue, but it ends with him blasting through time at the highest speed he's ever gone with his costume. Like, he turns into, like, a bolt of lightning, and it ends with, like, all the different versions of Wally, and he's just like, I run beyond sound, I run beyond light, I push the limits of speed. My name is Wally West. I'm the Flash. And that's where it ends. I think this is one of my favorite issues so far. I think it was really awesome. It was a very satisfying reveal. Even though I did figure it out before it happened, it was still very satisfying, because it's a great reveal. It's always one of my favorite plot twists in things, is when, like, the guy is the older version of the main character, where it's just like, oh, that mysterious person, it was themselves. Like, I'm always a big fan of that kind of reveal. It's fun. It's always fun when characters meet their older selves in stuff, or younger selves. But yeah, that's the end of Flash issue 0, which means we have one more 0-hour related issue, and that's Green Lantern issue 0, where we get to see what happened to Kyle Rayner and Parallax after 0 hour. And so we make it to Green Lantern issue 0. our final issue for Zero Hour. At the end of Zero Hour, Parallax and Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, were blasted away by the Big Bang. They're not dead. They're actually just being hurled through time, fighting one another. Like, Kyle literally has a ball and chain wrapped around Hal's throat. And they end up on Oa, back when Hal destroyed it. So they've traveled all the way through time, and now they're on Oa. All the dead bodies of the Owens are there. Well, they're not back in time. They're in the present. They're on Oa. The Owens' bodies are still there. Dead. And Kilowog's bones are still there. Parallax and Kyle continue their fight on Oa. But then Parallax realizes that he's running out of power, and that his only way to get it back is to absorb the power from Oa. But Kyle is like, no! What happened to you, man? You were a hero. Growing up, all the kids of my blood wanted to be you. Except for me, I wanted to be Superman. And Kyle creates like a landmine construct, which blows up Parallax. And when he falls on the ground, that's when he sees Kilowog's skeleton. He's like, oh my god, Kilowog, what have I done? What did I do? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, like, for this to go so far. Like, I've made a mistake. I killed the Owens, and then I killed my friends. I just want to undo this all. I want to bring them back. I want to bring everyone back to life. And Kyle shows a moment of compassion for Hal. He's like, I never really understood things. I always kind of looked at everything as black and white, and it was just like good guys versus the bad guys. But like, you're not a bad guy. You just had a shit life, and you've made the worst choices. And Hal's just like, and Kyle was like, and I, we have stuff in common because, my girlfriend died, and so my life is really terrible as well. And Hal's just like, not easy, is it? I know that better than anyone. So you're my replacement, huh? And Kyle's just like, yep. And he tells Hal his origin story of how he got the ring. And Kyle's just like, but I don't even know if I really want to be a Green Lantern. Like, I kind of just became one by accident. If you're really considering, if you really feel bad for what you've done, maybe it's best that you are the Green Lantern if you are willing to change. And Hal's just like, yeah, if you gave me the ring and made me Green Lantern again, that's all I really want. That's all my life. It would give my life meaning again, and and I'd be fine, And so Kyle was just like, And he gives Hal the ring, and Hal's just like, I'm back, I'm Green Lantern again. And Kyle's just like, yeah, well, probably bound to happen sooner or later anyway. So that's Ron Mars doing a little bit of a jab at comic books of it being like, well, Hal's probably going to come back eventually. So Hal gets the ring, and then he's like, alright, now to continue what I was doing. I'm going to siphon the power of Oa, and then use its power to recreate reality and bring everyone back. And Kyle's just like, come on, man, we just talked about this. This isn't the way. Seriously, stop. And Hal's just like, no, it's the only way. I gotta do it. I gotta do it, Kyle. And Kyle's just like, alright, look, maybe you should give me the ring back. We'll talk things through. Give me the ring. And Hal's just like, you just want to stop me, and pushes Kyle. And Kyle picks up Kilowog's skull and throws it at Hal, and Hal destroys it. And then Kyle makes a run for it, and Hal's just like, look, I don't want to have to kill you, but if you're going to try and stop me, I have no choice. He chases after Kyle, and he blasts him with a beam. And Kyle falls into the mausoleum underneath Oa, where all of the dead bodies of the Green Lanterns are. And he and Hal arrives, Kyle hides from him, and he hits one of the caskets on top of Hal. And Hal's just like, ah! And then Kyle takes the ring from him, and Hal's just like, it doesn't matter. I used the ring to siphon enough power that I can kill you anyway. I don't need the ring. And so they start fighting in the mausoleum, throwing dead bodies around. Looks like one of the bodies was Abin Sur. You see, Abin Sur's dead body come out of one of the caskets, which is really sad. And Kyle creates, a robot, a Gundam suit. And then, Kyle creates a Gundam suit, and then Hal creates,
a Black Knight suit or like a Power Ranger suit, and they're fighting each other. It's pretty fun. You know, you got Gundam versus like Sentai. But then Hal overpowers Kyle and gets him in like chains. And then he tries to convince Kyle to let him do what he wants to do by creating Alex, a construct of Alex. And he tries to get the construct of Alex to talk Kyle into joining him. And Alex is like, come on, Kyle, like, it'll be great. Like, bring me back to life. It's what you want. It's for the best. Kyle's just like, look, I love you, Alex, but, like, it's not right. I would have you back any way possible, but not like this. Like, I would love to have you back, but not like this. And he blasts the construct away. And Hal's just like, I was offering you happiness and you refused me. Do you know how many people wait all their lives for a second chance and never get one? And Kyle's just like, none of us get everything we want. And so Kyle starts like blasting the ground, and Parallax is just like, what are you doing? Kyle's just like, I'm doing the one thing that I need to do. You said that Oa gives you power. Well, I'm going to destroy it, because I imagine that if I destroy Oa, it'll destroy you with it. And Hal's just like, no, you're bluffing. And Kyle's just like, am I? And Parallax is just like, don't! And he tries to grab Kyle, and Kyle continues blasting Oa, and the energy continues to build in Oa until the entire planet explodes. And Kyle finds himself floating in space. And he's like, so then, there was only one Green Lantern. And I'm it. Everybody gotta get used to the idea. I know, quite a reputation to live up to, but don't expect me to get grey hair worrying over it. I'm not Hal Jordan. Hal's gone. Probably dead. The job belongs to me now. I've got the ring, and I think I understand the responsibility that goes along with it. I'll try to be worthy. That I promise. I'll try. Now, if I could just find my way back home. And yeah, so it ends with Kyle heading back to Earth. Parallax is dead. Parallax is dead. And yeah, that's it. That's the end of Green Lantern issue 0, and that's the end of 0 Hour. As you can see, this is why I decided to, include Green Lantern issue 0 on this, because it is, like, the official final to 0 Hour, because Parallax doesn't even get defeated in the event. It happens in a Green Lantern issue. So I felt like it was important to include that alongside, the Flash issue 0. But yeah, that's it. That's 0 Hour. My opinions on 0 Hour, definitely better than Bloodlines. Huge improvement over Bloodlines. DC definitely learnt their mistake and decided to make an event that was more in line with, some of the stuff that they were doing before, like Invasion and stuff, which I enjoyed Invasion. The problem with 0 Hour is that towards the end, it's just, because it's dealing with time, it's very complicated, and Extant is the biggest problem with the event. Once Parallax shows up, the event definitely becomes a lot better. Extant, I don't even know why they decided to bring back Monarch. Why would you go back and bring back the worst villain? No one liked Armageddon. Why are you bringing him back? Oh, I know why you're bringing him back. Because 0 Hour is written by Dan Jurgens, and Dan Jurgens co-created Monarch, so he wanted to use him again. That's pretty much the only reason Monarch was brought back and used for this event. And even Dan Jurgens ended up not wanting to use Monarch anymore, because he replaced him with Parallax towards the end of the event, which I know he probably planned from the very beginning. But it did feel like a thing of I don't want to use this villain anymore, I'm gonna put in Parallax. Damage showing up in the final issue and just being really important was kind of weird, because he didn't appear at all, and then in the final issue they were like, here's a new character that has his own series, so he has to be the one that defeats Parallax, right? He has to be the one that's responsible for the defeat of Parallax because he's a new character. I don't like it when events do that. I don't like it when events are just oh, well, it's the new character, so they have to be the one that beats the villain, right? In the end it was Oliver that did it, but you know what I mean. Especially because after this event, Damage would be relegated to the New Titans, which was at its worst era Like, he would be a new Titan, and then after that, he would be an occasional Titan member, and then he would kind of just fade into obscurity where no one wants to use him. Yeah, I think he was like in the New Titans, and then he was in the second Titans volume that came in the late 90s, and then after that, barely anyone ever barely anyone uses him outside of events and stuff. But yeah, that's Zero Hour. Not bad. Definitely better. I'd say it's like up on the list of like, it's better than like all the other 90s events that we've done. All of them. It's better than all of them. It's better than Millennium. Maybe I enjoyed it more than Invasion. I enjoyed Invasion. Maybe 0 Hour is better than Invasion. I don't know. I think it's something that I'd have to think about. I am thinking of creating like a tier list of all of the events once I'm done reading them all. I've actually been slowly updating it as time goes on. And eventually I'm going to have a full tier list. Every event, and I'll keep updating it when new ones come out, when I read them. But that's going to take a while. Yeah, so if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, or if you're watching it on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And hit the bell so that you get notifications for my videos. And if you're watching on the podcast, then subscribe to the podcast, like the podcast, share it around. Tell people about this if they like comic books, or if they want to get into comic books, if they like the Flash, if they've always wondered what happens in DC events and stuff. Well, I like Moon Knight. I got Moon Knight on here now. Tell them about it and spread it around. Spread the word. I really enjoy doing this, and every time I see even one person listen or watch a video, it means so much to me. Like, it means the world. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and next week, it's back to The Flash. We're going to be reading The Flash. Currently figuring out how many issues I'm going to do an episode over the next 2 weeks, because we got Underworld Unleashed coming up, and I'm trying to balance it out, because we've also got an event, like a Flash event, happening in between, like a crossover, so I gotta figure that out. I'm thinking of doing like 7 issues for the next 2 weeks, just because it works out perfectly to get to Underworld Unleashed. We'll see. Anyway, that's the end of this episode, and hope you have a good day, good night, good evening, whatever you're up to, and I hope to see you next week. Have a good one.